All right, so the next team we have for our team previews are the New York Knicks. They finished with a 50 and 32 record last season. They were the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. They ended up losing to the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference semifinals. And honestly, Trevon, we're pretty lucky that we didn't do this team for the team previews before the big news of the trade that's going down right now as we speak. They are expected to acquire Karl Anthony Towns from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they also got Mikal Bridges earlier this offseason in a trade with the Brooklyn Nets. They will be giving up Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo in the Karl Anthony Towns trade. And they also lost Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency as well. So, Trevon, what are your thoughts on the New York Knicks going into this upcoming season?
Yeah, the Knicks, honestly, I like them, especially after getting Mikal Bridges. Me and you both like the Knicks in theory, thinking about health and them being at full strength. Last season, we talked about who was the best matchup against the Boston Celtics a lot, and we constantly threw out the New York Knicks as the answer. And you thought about getting Mikal Bridges and just having Jalen Brunson being now your lead guy. You got Mikal Bridges to go along with the likes of OG Anunoby, and for both of them to be those perimeter defenders that you need on your team. They're a little bit two different type of archetypes, with OG being the more tank build, a lot stronger, and Mikal being the lengthier defender. And I think it just reiterates the thought that we have about them being, for example, the best matchup against Boston, because if we're being honest, that's who everybody is going to be going for. We know we have other teams like the Sixers who have formulated their own big three. But if you're in the Eastern Conference, you need to beat the team in green for sure. And I think they have the blueprint for that, but not only to just beat the Celtics, to also be in a top three position in the Eastern Conference. And I like DiVincenzo a lot. So him being included in that trade, I wasn't a big fan of it just because he provides good on ball defense, being that point of attack defender. And we saw what he did in the playoffs in those big moments on the road offensively, kind of just taking that load when they were already pretty much banged up, missing a lot of players when Brunson couldn't get it going after Brunson had a pretty hot stretch in the playoffs. DiVincenzo was that next guy up that kind of was creating stuff, shooting from the perimeter. So that's a big loss. But when you think about it, you did get Mikal Bridges, as we mentioned again, who's not only a better defender, taller and longer, but he's had some time to kind of work on the ball as well. And we know how great he is off the ball with his slashing. And, you can slot him at the two, honestly, which is what DiVincenzo was pretty much playing. You still have Josh Hart that's also going to provide some defense, and he can knock down some shots for you. So, you lose a great player like him, but you're also getting Mikal Bridges that has some strengths that DiVincenzo didn't, just physically when you look at it. And then also the big man spot has been very unstable for the Knicks. Hartenstein signed with the Thunder in free agency, and then also Mitchell Robinson just has not been there due to health. He just hasn't been a player that you were able to utilize. So now bringing in a more offensively gifted player in Karl Anthony Towns, that's just gonna provide more for this offense. I think Karl Anthony Towns is better off the ball. He's not gonna have to do a lot of like primary shot creating. I think whenever he has advantages, that's when you can really go to him. But I think this would be a pretty good fit for him. He's going to provide some spacing, obviously, some more skill for this New York team. Half court has sometimes been an issue for them. So I do like it. And then also going back to the thought of them matching up against the Celtics, I think Cat at the five is a great matchup against the Porzingis. They're both pretty much those stretch bigs. I think it gives you a better matchup because we know it's all about matchups, especially in the playoffs. So I'm not the biggest fan of losing DiVincenzo, but I still think you pretty much got a good deal, and you should be able to still be as productive and maybe even more productive with this squad. Getting Mikal Bridges, as you mentioned earlier, and then adding Karl Anthony Towns. I think they're a top three team in the Eastern Conference, and you know Karl Anthony Towns has already played with Tibbs, so this could be a pretty good match as well. From the Knicks standpoint, I really do think this will formulate into something good.
Yeah, I like the Karl Anthony Towns trade as well. I did not like the fact that the New York Knicks had to give up Dante DiVincenzo. I think Karl Anthony Towns is a better fit for the New York Knicks than Julius Randle was. So I understand trying to trade Julius Randle to bring in Karl Anthony Towns, who fills a need that you have on that team. You just mentioned Mitchell Robinson has been struggling with health in terms of being able to stay on the floor. They just lost Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency. So there was a big need at the center position. And Karl Anthony Towns was probably the best option available on the trade market for the New York Knicks to go after. And it just so happened that they had to give up Dante DiVincenzo. When you're making a trade, you have to give up something in order to get something. And Dante DiVincenzo was just one of those pieces that you had to give up in order to bring in Karl Anthony Towns, who fills a specific need that you have on the New York Knicks. So I do think overall it was a really good trade for the New York Knicks. You have a big that fits the system more than the big that you traded away. I do think Karl Anthony Towns is going to fit better on this team than he did Minnesota. In Minnesota, they asked him to be more of an offensive creator rather than an offensive finisher per se.
Mm.
And in this offense, you have Jalen Brunson, who is going to be your main creator and does a great job at it. And then you have Mikal Bridges, who you just mentioned has had reps and practice doing that in Brooklyn and is just continuing to get better at being an on-ball creator. So you have those two guys that are able to create offense for you and run an offense. And all Karl Anthony Towns has to do is just attack advantages and pick and pop. I think the pick and pop is going to be really good with this team. He's going to be able to catch and shoot from the big position. He's one of the best shooting big men in the league right now. So I think those things are going to be strengths of his game that the New York Knicks can utilize better than the Minnesota Timberwolves did during his time there. And again, I really like Dante DiVincenzo. I hate that the New York Knicks had to give him up. You just talked about how good of a season he had last year. He was one of the best shooters in the league, and he was one of the best on ball defenders and point of attack defenders. He's a really pesky perimeter defender that can guard the other team's point guard and cause havoc there. So that is a loss, but you do gain a player in a specific need that you had. So overall, I do think that the Karl Anthony Towns trade was what the New York Knicks needed. You just talked about the fit with Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. I think that's going to be a big key for the New York Knicks because adding Karl Anthony Towns, he's not as good as Isaiah Hartenstein or Mitchell Robinson at protecting the rim, right? So it's going to be important to have perimeter defense, and that's what OG Anunoby brings. That's what Mikal Bridges brings. That's what McBride brings. I think with those guys being able to be as good as they are on the perimeter is going to kind of hide or disguise lesser version of rim protection for the big man spot for the New York Knicks. So I think that's going to be very key for them. And then also with trading away Dante DiVincenzo, that does leave the New York Knicks a little light in terms of depth at the shooting guard position. You could try and have a big lineup and put Mikal Bridges at the two and OG Anunoby at the three, but trading away Dante DiVincenzo is going to open up some more opportunities for someone like Deuce McBride, who had a really good run during the playoffs and towards the end of the season last year. So I think this team still matches up very well with the Celtics, like you mentioned. I would have really liked to see them have kept Dante DiVincenzo, but like I said before, you got to give up something in order to get something in a trade, and Dante DiVincenzo was just one of those pieces that the New York Knicks had to give up. But overall, I still really like the New York Knicks. I think that they're going to be in the running, like you said, a top three spot, at least top four spot in the Eastern Conference. You still have your engine in Jalen Brunson. You have players like Josh Hart, who is another perimeter defender who I think is going to be great and a great rebounder at the guard position. You have OG Anunoby, who you just extended. Also, Jalen Brunson signing the team friendly deal that he did this season versus signing next season and getting a bigger contract. That gives you more flexibility to go out and get players or trade for players like Karl Anthony Towns. So I think the New York Knicks are in a really good spot, and this trade could be a precursor to maybe other trades or other additions to help strengthen that shooting guard spot. But overall, it was a really good trade, and I think that this team is going to be formidable in the Eastern Conference.